James Gunn's new DCU is officially started with the end of Creature Commandos Season 1. I just watched it, and here are my thoughts on the best and worst parts of Season 1. This is not going to be a recap of the season by any means, but I will be talking about some spoiler points and things that happen to specific characters. I gotta be honest, coming into this show, I was not that excited for it whatsoever. I was like, this just seems like it's going to be a rip-off Suicide Squad with lower tier characters that I'm familiar with, some of them, others I haven't even heard of, and I wasn't really excited to see this, but I should have put my faith in James Gunn because I honestly really love this series. I think the best thing this show did was focusing each episode on a different backstory of one of our creature commandos, because it smartly knows that a lot of the audience is probably not familiar with these characters, so this was a really creative way to show us the backstories and origins of all these different characters, and it got a lot more emotional than I was ever expecting. When I saw that Weasel was in this show, I was like, what is James Gunn's obsession with this character? Is it just so he can give his brother Sean Gunn a role in things? But oh my god, his flashback episode actually almost brought me to tears, and it's probably one of my favorite episodes, if not my favorite episode of the entire series. Seeing him play with the princess Alana and the other kids in his flashback, and he was just so happy, and then wrongfully being hunted because these guys thought he was some monster that was hurting them. It was heartbreaking. We just got Nina's backstory in the final episode. This was another one that was really just pulling on my heartstrings, seeing her being born with her lungs on the outside. Her own father puts her through this procedure that turns her into this fish-like creature that she is now. Seeing her go to regular school and just get bullied, becoming this like outcast monster. It was actually heartbreaking again. Like, yeah, we all know James Gunn is funny, and I'll get to the humor in a second. It's kind of a positive and a negative for me, but what really makes this work and things like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the sincerity, and I think that's why this new DCU is gonna be off to a really good start. This is exactly the type of stuff we need in a Superman movie. You connect to these characters and truly care for them, even when they're doing terrible things like in Creature Commandos. You still understand where they're coming from and what led them to become what they are. Like I just said, let's talk about the comedy a little bit. It's a little mixed for me. I will say for the most part, I think a lot of the jokes actually work for me, and there were actually some legitimate laugh out loud lines in this show for me, because again, I just connect with what James Gunn's doing, and I really appreciated a lot of the humor. Now, there are some jokes that are just really like that fake edgy, like, oh, we're making adult jokes just for the sake of it, that kind of felt like they were made by like a 13-year-old. Even when there is a joke that feels like it's written by like a preteen, I feel like the show acknowledges that, oh, that was a cringy thing with some of the more straight characters like Rick Flag, the bride, Amanda Waller. They're always there to like roll their eyes and kind of make fun of the joke itself and kind of cancel it out, in my opinion. There's just a lot of really funny characters. Like Dr. Phosphorus has a lot of really good one-liners in this. G.I. Robot, every time he's talking about killing Nazis, I was laughing out loud. I don't care how simple of a joke it was. It was effective. But the real comedy standout for me in this series was David Harbour as Frankenstein. I think he was the funniest character in the show, honestly. He is just such a simp for the bride trying to get her back, and it was just so funny watching him interact with characters like Rick Flag. Literally, like, all the dialogue lines he had were absolutely hilarious. And this show also looks amazing. I love the art style in this series. Like, there's so many just great uses of colors, great lighting and stuff, which you don't see a lot in animated projects. Something like Invincible, by comparison, I think looks very flat visually, and the animation itself and like the fight scenes and movement isn't even that much better in this than Invincible. But it goes to show you the importance of having a good foundational art style to fall back on, so that even if you're just looking at a still of the show, it looks really good, whereas Invincible, like I said, kind of looks very dull. Now let's get into something that was kind of a negative for me in the show, because no, it's not perfect overall, and like I said, I really love the different flashbacks we got in each episode focusing on a different member of the crew. But I personally think after we got Nina's flashback, we needed like 1 or 2 episodes fully focusing in on the other major plot line going on without any flashbacks to break it up, because it kind of felt like things just kind of moved along very quickly in that final episode, and we were like, okay, we're going to focus mainly on the character work, which again, I think is a good thing, but we needed a couple episodes without the flashbacks to then just wrap up the full final plot. Things were just moving a little bit too fast in that last episode. We get some weird like double reveal with the princess that I don't think worked very well, but like I said, maybe if we had a little bit more time focusing in the present day, it would have worked a little bit better. I just feel like ultimately it was a little bit too much of like oh, we'll see you next time on the next season. I would have liked the first season to be a little bit more conclusive, but with things like the bride getting her new team, it does seem like they are planning a second season. I just hope it gets confirmed and we get it by like the end of next year. Like, I don't want to wait 3 years for Creature Commandos again. And another thing is, coming into this series, I was very worried about this being the first official DCU project. I was like, it should definitely be Superman, start off with a big live action movie, not something that was created before you were even planning the new DCU. But I gotta say, I think James Gunn's analogy of saying this is just the appetizer to the bigger stuff actually worked pretty well. Like, yeah, this really isn't taking away any attention from Superman. That trailer was still like one of the most viewed superhero trailers of all time. It's only really the diehard superhero and comic book fans like us here, like me and you watching this video, that were watching this series anyways. And it gave us a fun enough glimpse into this universe. We got to see characters like Cersei. People like, oh my god, she's so underpowered. I don't care. It was just to fit the narrative. You know she's going to be more powerful when we see her in a Wonder Woman movie eventually. We got to see things like Clayface. We know there's a Batman in this universe. I really just had an absolute blast with this show. I thought it was super enjoyable, and there wasn't a single episode that I'd point to and say like, oh, this was bad. Most of them were very good to great in my opinion. Before I give you my full rating of the show, I'd really appreciate if you guys went over on Twitter or X and followed me. But I give Creature Commandos a strong 8.5 out of 10. If you watched the first season, let me know your rating for it and your favorite parts of it in the comments below, and click above me to see some updates about Robert Pattinson's The Batman Part 2 potentially being in the DCU.